meeting to order. My name is Pete Berube. I am joined by Joyce Boyardi and John Stedman here in the room. As other committee members have joined us via Zoom, and that is Jim Borgman, Kathy McGinnis, and Sarah Reyes as of right now. Deirdre, if you wouldn't mind, just let me know if anybody joins late. Also in the room is Carol Johnston and Mike Kaczynski. So I'll call the meeting to order. I just want to remind everybody that please speak up into the mic. And also for those that are on Zoom, if you cannot hear us, please interject and let us know, and we will adjust accordingly. We're trying to accommodate the best we can, follow the rules of the building, and use a little bit of common sense. And I see Peter Underhill has joined us as well. So.
Okay.
Thank you. And so first meeting agenda item is Article 8, Stormwater Bylaw Regulation Amendment, and Jacor LeBlanc. I hope I pronounced that right. Deirdre, do I see Jacor?
She's there, but she's muted.
Muted.
Where is she?
Top right.
Jacor, you have to unmute yourself.
Hey, Jody just joined.
Thank you. Deirdre, can you unmute Jacor, or does she have to do it herself?
I've asked her to unmute. I don't think I can unmute her.
Okay.
No, I can't.
Jacor, can you hear us? And if you can, just wave to us. Okay, no wave. Not even sure she has audio to hear us. So, the issues on Article 8 Stormwater Bylaw Amendment was...
There she is.
Oh, good. Okay, you saved me from having to do research on refreshing my own memory. So, Jacor, we were going to, we had some questions on Article 8. We voted it last week. Actually, I believe it passed, but
5 to 4.
5 to 4. Let's see, where is it on my notes? Yep, okay, got it. So, if you would, floor is yours. Hello?
I don't know if she's connected to Lonnie.
Okay. John McVeigh, if I see you there, do you have something, or do you know if Jacor has something to explain on the stormwater bylaw regulation?
Or can you reach her?
Yeah, let me try to call her.
Hi.
Let's see.
I know, but I'm not hearing anything. I'm unmuted,
Oh,
but I'm not hearing anything. So I think I'm going to have to come back in.
Well, we can hear you now.
She needs to turn up her volume.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Deirdre, would you refresh my memory as to why we have them on the agenda, given that we've already voted it and passed it? That our recommendation?
I believe you had requested it, Pete.
Do you recall why? Is that in the minutes?
Did you want to do 12?
No.
Do that. Do
All right. Well, given that we're having technical difficulties and we're not sure why, and we know that it's passed, we're going to move on. All right? Okay, so we'll move on. If we have a chance to come back, if we can establish communication, then we'll come back to it. So Article 2, FY22 operating budget adjustments. These are the marijuana impact fee funds. So the issue that we had last week was specifically with the social worker that is listed as being requested by, or at least listed as a department under the school, but it lists as a town-wide social worker. So we did request the school to come in and help us understand or refresh our memory. So I'm going to turn it to Mr. Mullaney first. Superintendent Mullaney, floor is yours, and I know Mr. Wiggin is here as well.
Yes, thank you, and we also have Robin here from the school committee. This is a request that we've had on the book since the original impact funds requests, and I guess the main impetus of it is that we have counselors in schools, we have the adjustment counselors in our schools,
Right,
but
well,
a number of the kids.
I can hear them now, so hopefully they can hear me.
Bob, would you pause for 1 second?
Yeah.
John, while you're on the phone with Ms. LeBlanc, would you, there we go. So now she's muted. Okay, Mr. Mullaney, back to you.
Okay, so you know, we have a number of students in school that need, you know, mental health services, et cetera, and we're able to meet their needs during the day. You know, in fact, one of the requests is for an additional support for an adjustment counselor in the schools. But we have a number of students whose issues, you know, need to be addressed beyond the school day. And our proposal for a town-wide clinician would be something that, you know, a position that could be shared, because in addition to helping students with mental health needs or accessing services, a town-wide clinician could connect with elderly, connect with, you know, adults with, you know, mental health issues, or just simple issues like filling out forms for Social Security, disability, for food stamps, fuel assistance, mass health, connecting them with the Department of Mental Health. So we see the position as kind of a liaison between, or shared between the town and the schools. And just, you know, just a survey of some local communities. Natick has 3 social workers, 1 school, 1 town, and 1 police clinician. Franklin has a police social worker. Ashland has 1 social worker at the middle and high school and a town social worker. Medway has 1 with the police department and 1 at the middle high school. Needham has 2 town social workers. Westwood has 1 at the high school, and the town has 1 in its youth and family services department. And Medfield has 2 town social workers who are housed at their high school. You know, and given the number of mental health issues we're seeing and we've seen over the last you know, number of years since this has been on the request form, you know, those issues have only increased. And so, you know, we think this is a very important use of the marijuana impact funds.
Okay. I'm not sure, Bob, if you want to, if Mr. Wiggin has anything to add. I do have a couple questions, but I'll let you decide if, looks like he's given us the east-west nod, so I'll go to my question. And I would like for you to tell us, obviously protecting privacy obviously doesn't need to be said, but said anyway, you know, can you characterize the needs for social work that you're seeing specifically as a result of retail sales in town within the school?
I certainly think it's, you know, it's been a factor in the increase in issues we're seeing, obviously, particularly those that involve substance abuse and misuse. And certainly, we're seeing a spike in the number of students who are involved in that activity, not necessarily, purchasing it from a legal marijuana dispensary, but the fact that, it is legalized for adults, that filters down to the kids, and we've had some kids respond, well, it's not illegal. Well, it is illegal for youth.
Okay. One of the things that, I'll just offer an opinion, and then I'm going to open it up for some discussion. And the opinion is that I feel that one of the reasons that this that this is getting some scrutiny is perhaps because of the department, the discrepancy, frankly. I do believe that there's a disconnect between, on the surface here, that the school is requesting a town-wide social worker. And to me, the table as it's presented is it's imperfect. The department, in this case, really has less to do about it than, in my opinion, the need for a social worker to mitigate the effects of retail sales of marijuana. And I recall that retail sales of marijuana was hotly discussed and debated, and when it passed, and it was not unanimous. It was something that was fairly divided, and I think that offering social work capacity, and a social worker isn't necessarily a mental health worker. It's somebody that helps refer those that have issues, any type of social issues, whether it be a need for any type of assistance, whether it be for addiction counseling or medical issues or some sort of intervention services that may be out there. That's what the social work does. It helps people find the appropriate services. And where I was headed with this was, given that there certainly were many people in town that were against this because of the potential impacts that they felt strongly about, it helps mitigate some of those impacts to anybody, whether you're for or against marijuana. I think there's evidence that's out there that there certainly is the potential for abuse and addiction or other, there's a number of arguments out there for and against it, but I don't think that this is an inappropriate use of impact funds. I do think that the table is imperfect. So I'll offer that up, and I would open it up to the, actually before I do that, I'll just ask Ms. Briggs if she has something else to add from the school committee's perspective.
You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I know, sorry. I think that this is like a real value to the community with what we've been seeing, especially with kids that are going to be needing or need help outside of school. And this is something that the school committee definitely supports in having school-wide and something in the town. I mean, kids still need help when the school day ends. And we've seen that especially with this pandemic, how kids are struggling. And I think that it won't hurt to have someone kids can connect to when once the school day is over. They can have someone to talk to. If their parents aren't home yet, they can go somewhere to have a conversation with an adult that they trust and can get some help or get direction, like you're saying. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so open it up to the rest of the committee for some comments.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stedman.
I'd like to hear from Mr. McVeigh and the town administrator if they have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, this is John McVeigh, the Board of Health Director. I'm in favor of the social worker for a couple of reasons. I think that we would assist in any, middle school, high school addiction issues. No matter how you fall on the side of marijuana, whether you consider it a gateway drug or not, it's debatable. But I think that it's there and it could be utilized for that purpose, assisting in addiction issues, as well as we've seen vaping increase quite a bit over the last few years. And we know that vaping, you can vape cannabis and marijuana products. So I think that that's another issue that is connected intimately to the marijuana concept that's now pervasive in communities. So we're in favor of it, and I would imagine the chair as well would be as well. I can't speak for JICA, but I would imagine she's in favor of it as well.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Kaczynski, and then if JICA has comments and is able to hear, and we're able to hear her, we'll certainly offer you to, to contribute. So, Mr. Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After your last meeting last Wednesday, I did reach out to several of the department heads here in the community, specifically the senior director, the fire chief, the health director, and the police chief. They were all very supportive of the idea of having a social worker come in, and they thought it could be very useful to the operation of their departments. It had great potential to assist them in how they serve the public. Just wanted to say that it is something that the town, the select board and the administration supports, and do recommend that the finance committee seriously consider recommending it.
Thank you. And okay, Ms. LeBlanc, can you hear us?
Yes, my apologies. This
No
is
problem.
Jai Carla Blanc, current chair of the Board of Health. Apologies for my technical difficulties earlier. Well, I can speak in favor of this, both as a mother of 3 teens who went through their teenage years in Millis, as well as the research I did before the marijuana issue came up for a town vote in terms of what happens sociologically and in terms of family systems, school systems with teenagers who are in challenging situations, both by being an adolescent, but also having this double standard where adults are able to take, a recreational drug, but they are not, but it does trickle down. I think it's always a good idea to have other resources for adolescents because they move away from their parents and often their families when they are in challenging situations, and they're also looking for autonomy. I think Millis would be very well served by having a person of this sort and a system of this sort, especially given that it's a small town, there's not a lot to do. And, it'd be, having an extra support system and resource, I think, can only serve both the children of Millis, but also the families of Millis.
Thank you very much. Any more inputs from the committee while we have several guests?
Mr. Chair, Kathy McInnes.
Go ahead, Kathy.
First off, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chair, for bringing the parties together. I was the one that voiced concern about this, and my concern is what happens after 3 years. I haven't heard yet, and perhaps how is this position going to be divvied up? Is it 50-50? Is it because we're in year 2 now, and I just want to make sure that in year 5 that if it proves successful, which it obviously sounds like it will, where are the funds going to come from this? Is it going to be a 50% for the school or something like that? I believe we should plan ahead in something like this, Mr. Chair. So if anyone could offer advice as to how this position is going to be divided, it sounds more like a much more for the school than the town, because the items that Mr. Mullaney recommended help with senior papers, senior citizens. That's done by the outreach worker that was just hired here for that particular reason. And nothing that he stated regarding the senior center is marijuana related. So just looking for clarification, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Kathy, I support that question. I think that's a question that definitely needs to be answered as we go forward. And not only that, and that's more in the intermediate. We have a few more years of HCA funding and number of years of tax revenue, so there should be revenue available to do that, but I don't think any of us can answer the question that you've asked. I just think we need to keep it on the burner. But the question that does need to be asked along the lines of what you're asking is, if this gets funded, if it passes, who is the person going to get their marching orders from? Is it from the school? Is it from the Board of Health? Is it from whoever picks up the phone and calls the person? I mean, who's setting the priorities? And if this, that's my question is, and I'm not even sure who can answer the question. That kind of illustrates the issue with, we're planning for a town-wide resource, and we're saying that the school is requesting it. Does that mean that the school is setting the priorities for the resource that should be available for the town? Mr. Mulaney, can you offer an opinion on that?
Yeah, I would certainly, be willing to work with Mr. McVeigh, Chief Sophia, Chief Barrett, any of the town departments in determining, where the person would be housed, what hours, and effectively, who is the ultimate supervisor. I'd certainly be willing to talk with any and all department heads that would be supportive of having this position in town.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. I think it's a little premature to be asking for a social worker without having all of these ducks in a row and knowing how it was going to be divvied up. Once again, I'll repeat the items that you did mention for the seniors are already being addressed. This sounds like it's really going to be for the school kids. I'm not opposed to students getting advice and having someone to talk to, but we have a police officer right now that we have a police officer who is paid to talk to the kids and be there for as a liaison. I don't know that someone of middle school or high school age is going to want to go talk to a social worker. I just don't see it. I remember being a kid, I didn't care who you were. I wasn't going to come and talk to you if I had a problem. I think that my feeling is some of it has to come from the home, and I understand there are parents that are both working, but that also people have health insurance for this reason. And if you need somebody to talk to, you schedule an appointment for your children to go see somebody to talk to. I don't see how this is going to benefit. If there's benefit, it's only benefiting the school. So if that's the case, then it should be something that the school department take care of. That's just my opinion.
Well, in response to that, I'd also like to say, certainly this would be helpful for school-aged students, children, but I think a town social worker could also work with parents, parenting skills. Not everyone has health insurance. They should, but just negotiating, getting on mass health and things like that, very difficult for some families. And I think a lot of the family services, working with parents to get the services their family needs and their kids may need is something that, we really don't have the capacity to do in the schools during the school day. A lot of the services that these families need are outside of what the school can actually do, what an adjustment counselor in the school can do. So this person could be a liaison with our adjustment counselors and counselors in the schools, but they could provide services to the families that we just can't provide. And certainly, it's good to know that the seniors have that person helping them with, a lot of the services that are available to them and sometimes confusing for people to access But I think, that person could be supported by, a town social worker. There's a number of, issues in town, that this position could certainly, service.
Mr. Mulaney?
Can I just pipe in? Oh.
One second, Ms. Briggs. Mr. Mulaney, can you describe for us, would these resources be allocated or added to a position that's already there and you're expanding the duties of somebody that's already been hired, or is this potentially a new hire, a part-time hire?
This would be new. Really, a school adjustment counselor, they don't have the bandwidth to provide these, almost individual services outside the school day. They have a caseload of students they work with, and that caseload fluctuates. It includes, kids they see regularly, and it's kids they see in crises.
No, I understand that. I mean, I don't personally think that there's there's a separate set of skills between a social worker and an adjustment counselor. Again, a social worker, in my experience, is somebody that helps arrange the services that somebody else provides. If there were a young person or somebody with, again, addiction issues or what have you, typically, or sometimes, I wouldn't say typically, sometimes those people need help. They don't know who to call. They don't know what the resources are, whether it's applying for benefits or finding, again, addiction counseling services or what have you. It's almost a dedicated referral service is what a social worker provides. They're finding those expertise, and maybe they do some counseling as well, but it's not necessarily specific to the schools. They could help somebody that across the whole services, or the spectrum of services that could be needed in a situation where somebody has addiction. Again, really what we're talking here about, again, specific to marijuana, because this request has to be focused on the impact of retail sales. In order to use these funds, it has to be focused on. It's not for bullying, it's not for all these issues that come up at the school. It's across the town. What is the impact of selling, to mitigate the impact of selling marijuana in town? And that's what we signed up to do. We signed up to, at least the several people in town, when they advocated for it, that they would be services to mitigate the risks that were of concern. The select board did that, those that advocated for it. There were a lot of concerns at the time that this was voted in that would be mitigated, and that's why there is the 3% HCA. It's solely to do that. Mr. Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple points to follow up. I know it was mentioned that the Council on Aging does have an outreach worker that is available for seniors. That is somewhat limited. That person is only available 3 days a week in the office. A lot of times when incidents occur, we really need access to a social worker more immediately, and I would see this position as someone that could be on call, could be available for say the fire department or any other emergency if we have to deal with a family situation. A lot of the things, and speaking with the fire chief, that come up have to do with drug use in the community, and that creates family issues that really would spill over to an expertise of a social worker to help that family find resources and other help in the community. So I think this position would help fill the gaps that currently exist in the departments. And your point is well taken about the connection to the marijuana. And I think a lot of the issues and concerns that come up have to do with drug use in the community. We can talk about whether it's marijuana as an entry drug or some other drug, but that is one of the main focuses of the police and fire in regards to this. So just wanted to put that out there for the committee.
Okay. I'll entertain a couple more comments, and then I really want to move on, because we do have a lengthy agenda, so.
We do.
Go
I
ahead.
just have one more thing
Go
to
ahead.
say. Generally, your family doctor is the person that you talk to for assistance on some of these issues that you're discussing about getting help, where to get the resources, where to go to get a help with the marijuana use. And I think probably most people have a family doctor. I just don't. Obviously, I'm not in favor of spending $60,000 of this money for a social worker. That's only benefiting the schools. It's not benefiting the senior population.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Kathy McInnes?
Can I just, hold on 1 second. The committee is going to come back to this. I'm going to wrap up discussion on it now. We're going to come back to this tonight because we are going to vote this article. And I don't know necessarily if if you have a question for some of the other non-committee personnel that are online or here, please ask your question. Otherwise, we'll come back to it and we'll discuss it some more.
I could ask the town administrator later, I suppose, but.
No,
is
you
this
go ahead,
going to
ask
be
him
a
now.
school employee or a town employee, sir? I mean, what union is it in, or, again, I wish I knew these things before. And to me, it sounds like it's more a school position. I'd be in favor of a social worker for the school rather than some social worker coming in and saying, oh, wait a minute, I got to go an hour over to the town hall or drive around here or drive there. So, thank you.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is something, some of these administrative details are still going to be worked out. And certainly, I've had some discussions with the superintendent in regards to this. We are going to have additional discussions. And certainly, these things can be ironed out. We really wanted to see if the community was supportive of this concept. And the town, the municipal departments in the school have a very good working relationship, and we feel strongly that we'd be able to work through all of these issues. And we didn't know when these funds would be made available. It does appear at this fall town meeting that they're available to move forward. And again, I feel confident that the superintendent and I can work these administrative issues out. So to me, it comes down to an issue of whether the finance committee feels this is an appropriate use of the funds and whether it'll provide a valuable service to the community.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Stedman.
If I might, I'd like to ask Mr. Germain, representing the Select Board, on his feelings as to whether it should be housed at the school or elsewhere, if he has any.
Mr. Germain.
Thank you. I'll be perfectly frank. I want to listen to the conversation as it progresses. I have some thoughts, but we haven't discussed this in any great detail at the Select Board as yet. So any opinions I'll offer, which I'm prepared to a little later, will be my opinions, not necessarily reflective of the entire Select Board.
Okay. Ms. Briggs.
I just wanted to say one more thing, if I may, that in response to Joyce's comments there, you're right that we do have police in school, but police are trained for different things than social workers are. And some people are not comfortable going to the police. They will be more comfortable going to a social worker, whether it's a family in town or a student. And I think that your assumption on health insurance is pretty biased. Not everybody in town has that. And so for them to go to their doctor is something that they might not be able to afford to do, or they might not have health insurance, so they can be pointed in the right direction of someone that can help them with this person in the town. And I also want to say that kids today are already in therapy. Kids in elementary school are in therapy. They're already talking to people, and having another person to talk to get information from is always a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to cut it off there. I appreciate everybody's inputs, and they certainly will be considered, I know, when we vote later tonight. Okay, I'd like to go back to Jakar, if I may. I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing your name, but forgive me, I don't recall what we had left to discuss on Article 8. I show that we voted it. But if you were invited or asked a question specific to Article 8, now's your opportunity to give us a little bit more input. There was a good amount of discussion about the article for the last couple of weeks when we met. Candidly, I was opposed to it, but I'm in the minority, and I'm fine to be there, so I'm not looking to rehatch it. So if you have something to help us, with it, that's fine, because it will be discussed at town meeting. I can't remember, we actually assigned this article to Mr. Underhill, so I'm sure he will, if he hasn't already, reach out to you for some background information as he will need it, and we always want to listen to the experts. So, floor is yours.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to come before the Finance Committee and answer any additional questions I may be able to answer. I know that Mr. McVeigh and Melissa from Beta have been attending meetings and answering questions. I'm not, I don't have a specific agenda. I was invited to come, and I'm happy to come. Essentially what I can, and I don't know if this has been offered, I wasn't at the other two meetings where this amendment has been discussed, but what prompted us at the Board of Health to bring this forward was essentially, ironically enough, in part feedback from both the Glen Ellen developers as well as two other engineers that were presenting plans of development who were suggesting that given Millis's large amount of wetlands and the increase in the water table that's forecast for Massachusetts, this part of Massachusetts, over for the next century of up to 3 to 5 inches is what the state of Massachusetts has forecast, that it would make sense for Millis to have a provision in our stormwater regulations for high groundwater building. And the Glen Ellen development came through the Board of Health in my first term with the Board of Health. And I was surprised that they were proactively doing French drains, but not doing any basements. And they said straight out that it was a high water table. They did not want to incur either legal issues down the road, but mostly they said, we're a quality organization. We're offering high-end building, and we want our inhabitants to be happy. And so we are not going to put in basements as we might somewhere else because of the nature of this site. That impressed me. And it also impressed me that engineers for developers were saying, we would be happy. We would work with an amendment for having having a 2-foot clearance between high groundwater and the basement. And given, I was looking at the Millis Open Space and Rec plan that Millis in 2019 was granted approval of, and over in this report that allowed Millis to then qualify for different grants for mitigating stormwater, open space, et cetera, over and over was the feedback from town as well as data that said stormwater is going to be more and more of an issue. How to keep it going naturally, how to refresh the groundwater, et cetera, et cetera. So to us, it just made sense to be proactive, looking out not only for the groundwater and the quality of the drinking water, but also for the people that we're inviting to become future Millis residents. So, having a home that you purchase that already has a high potential for having water issues, which then bring mold issues, which also, if even if you have a sump pump, it's only as good as the electricity you have. Just seemed to be it seemed to be very common sense to move into this amendment. to protect both, as I said, future residents, but also our groundwater, our drinking water, and, keeping an eye on all of this is just going to get more and more so. So that's really what initiated us, as well as developers being proactive with the situation. And it seemed time for us to move this forward into a proactive position in terms of our stormwater regulations. So that's what initiated it. We've done a lot of research. We've talked with engineers. We've talked with, towns that have done this already in terms of what they found. And they said there was no negative impact on development. So that was the spirit in which we brought this forward, to say, we think this is a good idea.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stedman?
Just for the record, I'd like to clarify that every home in Glen Ellen has a basement. Some have sump pumps, some do not, but 100% of them have basements.
Thank you.
Have basements?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was not what I have from, most homes have foundation drains, the precautionary groundwater, isn't it?
Yeah,
That made conscious
they have
effort.
foundation
Oh,
drains.
yes, okay, so the engineer, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The engineer made a conscious effort to engineer so some pumps wouldn't be used.
Yeah.
Didn't have to be provided and would not be necessary. I apologize, that was my misreading of some notes from Melissa of Beta.
Okay.
Well, for the record, there's also a sump pump in my home at Glen Ellen. So.
Okay.
Right, for crawl spaces that.
No, it's a
Okay,
basement. It's
okay.
a full basement.
All right.
Okay.
We appreciate the inputs. I actually, again, we've had a good discussion on this. We voted it. I'm not looking to rehatch it. If anybody wants to rehatch it when we discuss and it's not going to be me, when the committee does our final votes on the warrant, that may happen, but we appreciate your input. I'm going to move on unless there's any last questions for Jacor. Super. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay. I'm going to call an audible, and I'm going to move the discussion of certified free cash. Kathy, go ahead. You have to unmute. I cannot pay attention to all the hand waving.
Just saying goodbye, Mr. Chair. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Mr. Underhill did too.
He's a trendsetter. Okay. We're going to move the certified free cash update because we really ought to have that prior to the Article 3 capital items discussion. So those of you that I think have joined us from the school, you're welcome to stay with us. I don't anticipate that we're going to have any more questions, and that's the risk I'm willing to take, but I definitely want to thank you for joining us tonight. You're welcome to stay.
And thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time and everybody's time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ms. Johnston.
Thank you. I sent notification out. We were notified October 14th by Department of Revenue that our free cash had been approved. For the general fund, the free cash amount for fiscal year 2021 ending June 30th, and as our...
Excuse me, it's very hard to understand you.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay. I'll start from the beginning. We were notified on October 14th that the free cash was certified for the town of Millis. The free cash as of July 1st, 2021, the general fund free cash number is $2,072,363. For the sewer enterprise, the retained earnings is $410,766. For the water enterprise, the retained earnings is $510,539. And the stormwater enterprise retained earnings is $577,896. As for this town warrant that we have, right now, the amount of money that we have set up for free cash for this town warrant is $1,006,630.05.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. So of the items that are in this town warrant, they are currently for $1,006,630.05 coming from free cash. Of that free cash, $244,478 is for the marijuana impact funds that are in the article. The balance is $762,152.05, and that was for free cash for the other items for the general fund. We have more than enough free cash to cover the items for the fall town meeting. We also must take into consideration that for the spring town meeting, we will have an additional 785, I'm projecting, we'll have another $785,979 that needs to be funded for the general fund, and another $243,000 for the balance of the marijuana impact funds. We have to remember coming into the spring that we probably will have 2 additional items on the warrant which we typically dismiss. One of them would be to increase our stabilization, and another will be to fund some OPEB, which is the other post-employment benefits.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions just because it'll help clarify for me, and I'm hoping that it also paints a clear picture for the rest of the committee. Free cash, essentially, you know, that number, $2,072,363, seems like a large chunk of change, and we're ready to, you know, get spending, but that's just not the case. It only tells a part of the picture, and the part of the picture is that there's must-pay bills, which you listed, but not necessarily in terms that you understand this and work with this every single day, and you have working knowledge of it. We don't have that the way that you do. So I just want to clarify that from that $2 million, $72,363, that there's money comes off the top, and I would like for you to list those categories, the main categories for off the top. Some of them are leases that were approved previously for purchases, and so can you categorize those, put those in the big chunks just for the general fund right now, the general fund free cash?
Sure. So a part of that general fund free cash, the 2 million, right away, 488,000 comes off the top because that's marijuana impact funds. That has to be put and spent toward marijuana mitigation. So now you're at 1,500,000. The 1,500,000 now in this particular warrant, we have additional FY22 operating budget of 65,000.
What is that for?
That is for, it's on Article 2.
Is it police?
Article 2, it is 50,000 for additional fire repair fund and 15,000 for SEIU bargaining.
Okay, so Article 2.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
Article 2.
Okay.
So Article 1 is 13,167.05, and that's for unpaid bills. Then we have the Article 2, 65,000 for the fire and the SEIU, and then we have 244,478 for the marijuana impact funds.
Please say that last part again, because
Sure.
I had marijuana up above at 488. You just added another,
Well, it's
subtracted
488
another
well,
244.
the 488 is part of that.
Okay,
So when you're looking at Article 2, you'll see
Okay,
out of
I
that,
understand.
488,
Yep. Okay,
244 is coming out for that.
thank you.
Mhm. Article 3, we have capital items for $532,875. Article 10 is 40,000 for tree removal. If anyone's following along with their warrant, you'll see these numbers in your warrant. That's exactly where they came from.
So the 40, okay. Would you repeat that about the tree removal?
Sure, Article 10 is for tree removal, and that's 40,000
So that will come from free cash.
free cash.
Right.
Article 11 is to fund the FY21 snow and ice deficit of $78,810. Article 12 is to fund the unemployment insurance for $25,000. Article 13 is to fund the actuarial expense, and that is $7,300. So all of those items for the free cash piece, not including the marijuana impact fee, is $762,152.05. Then when you add that $244,000 for the marijuana impact fees, that's where the $1,006,630.05 comes into play. That is just for the spring. For the fall. Then we have the spring items that will be coming up. Again, I estimate $15,000 for unpaid bills, just because it's run that way for the last several years. For the operating budget would be the remainder of the host community impact fees. That would be the $243,000. So all of your marijuana impact fees will have to be spent for this coming year. Then we also have the audit will be coming up for $37,000 in the spring. There will be, this is our interim recertification year for the town for assessment. So we'll have an additional $20,000 for the interim year inspection, and then for the recertification, remainder of the process is another $18,000. I have police vehicles estimated at $34,000 to finish out their, these are leases that are already in play. Police vehicle, school bus leases for $90,000, school computer leases for $46,600. I put in road maintenance and repair for $45,000. School computer leases new is $23,300. Medicare reimbursements $5,000, and unemployment insurance for $7,700. I also put in an estimated amount for stabilization. The stabilization policy is 5% of what your budget is. So I'm estimating we'd need an additional $150,000 at this point, maybe a little extra will be needed in the spring. And OPEB, we haven't been funding that, but we need to. And so there's $50,000 put in for that. So for a general fund for the spring, it's $542,530.92, with an additional $243,448 for the marijuana, bringing the total amount of our free cash available after all of these items have been taken into consideration. We would have, the remainder would be about $280,000 discretionary for the spring.
Okay. If you could you go back a moment ago? I believe you said something along the lines of $43,000 for pavement maintenance?
No, road maintenance and repair, I put $45,000.
Okay. Why?
What I did was I took the spring articles that we had for last spring, and I used those same things for this spring coming up, because typically we do the same thing each spring. So these are just placeholders. Doesn't mean that that's what's going to be on the warrant, but typically that's what's on the warrant.
But it would have to be on the warrant. In other words,
Right.
it would be an article and it would be
Yes.
voted.
Yes.
And it would it be voted as an operating budget item or a capital item?
Well, I think that's something that has to be a discussion on. A lot of these items, there's been discussion whether they are a capital item, which is where they would get funded by, or are they a lease item and should be part of the operating budget.
Okay.
So if you incorporate them into the operating budget, then you're going to have to increase the budgets for those particular departments
Okay.
to be able to take care of those.
Okay.
If I might,
You may.
Mr. Chair. The sheet that's in our packet lists on the back, it says the spring town meeting must fund items, and it's $224,500. That number that you read out orally, I guess, has changed to $542,530.92. Is that correct?
I don't know what you have in front of you. So let me
So-
see it.
Okay, so I typically just put this together, so I wasn't aware of all the other items that the finance director had in mind.
So this is
I
not my
apologize
list.
for that.
This is a list that
Yeah.
Deirdre came up with.
All right, so, I mean, all of the, we don't have the level of detail in
This
our
is-
sheet.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
turn your sheet
Yeah.
over there.
So-
That's okay. I wasn't
Yeah.
looking at this at all, so.
So this is
That's the
typically, this is typically what your secretary does from the FinCom, based on what you're got on the warrant. So this isn't my information, this is Deirdre's
Okay?
Understand.
estimate.
But,
But that number that, the number that would be in that sheet that you just read was 542,000 and change, correct?
Right, so it
Okay.
would be, 542,000 for just the general fund, and then an additional 243,000 for the balance of the host community agreement funding.
I understand. Thank you.
okay, I appreciate the rundown. I actually would like for you to, do you think we need the same level of detail for the enterprise funds?
On the enterprise funds,
Mhm.
what you currently have, I gave everybody what their numbers are, and I'm not quite sure. I sent the certified free cash information to Deirdre, and she normally posts it on your website. She may have done that.
Which I think is
Okay, yes, yep.
4 sheets,
Yep.
one for each
Right.
fund,
So,
essentially.
so right now, for the enterprise funds, the only thing that we have going into this town meeting is on Article 1, you have unpaid bills for sewer, $357, water's $465, stormwater's $358.97. That would be in Article 1. You'll see that. And then the other item that we have for the water fund, but it is a raise and appropriate, so it'll be off of user fees, is the 214,000. The only thing coming off of the retained earnings would be the unpaid bills.
So the 214 would not come from the enterprise fund, it would come from free cash, is that?
No, it would be from the user fees from the water fund, not from their retained earnings. Just like their normal expense lines on their operating budget. So you'll, so those are the only items we have coming out of their retained earnings at this point, are just the unpaid bills portion.
You need a moment, John?
No.
Okay. Anything noteworthy on sewer, Carol?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't seen anything coming up that's going to impact retained earnings. It would be, all of the capital items that we have, I believe are only general fund items this year. That's
Okay.
typically what impacts it, is if it's a capital item coming up, for one of the enterprises.
None of the Article 3 items are being split multiple ways between general fund and
Not that I'm aware of, unless,
the excavator,
That's not the way it reads.
all general, DPW.
now, that may be a point of discussion, whether the excavator, I know when we were here last week, somebody had said it's going to be split 4 ways. That was not, we took it that it was just going to be DPW. But if it's going to be split 4 ways, then it would just be a matter of splitting that number divided by 4
And adjust.
and adjusting it.
Okay. Mr. Stedman?
This may be a stupid question, and we don't have Mr. McKay here, but the $214,000 for the water tank,
Yes.
will that significantly extend the life of that water tower? And if so, I think the case could be made that it's a capital item.
Well, we have, it's a 20-year, I believe, 20-year It's a 20-year maintenance contract with an outside firm. So it will become a line item within their regular budget.
Oh, I understand,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to go to Ms. Kabibo to talk about town meeting procedures discussion.
Hi, everyone. So we've been having quite a few town meetings around the town meeting on November 8th. As it stands right now, we are doing it inside, utilizing the auditorium and the cafeteria. We have all the protocols in place for distancing, et cetera, and we are abiding by the school's mask mandate, which means the only exceptions to people joining the meeting that are unmasked will be medical, and we will be screening them. And this will all go out to towns that they will have this information. We've had conversation with Bob Mullaney, superintendent, as well as the chair of the school committee about our protocols, which I can enumerate for you in a bit. In terms of the setup, we will be utilizing the stage as well as the lower part because we do need to keep some distancing. This finance committee will be on the stage with a dedicated microphone, and as well as myself and town council. The selectmen will be down below, as well as the town clerk and the assistant town clerk. So, those are basically, and all of the protocols we use at the prior meetings, we will be disinfecting the microphones, the bathrooms will be, kept up and things like that. So, I guess I'm kind of opening it up to what things you'd like me to explain or what questions you might have in terms of how we're proceeding.
Thanks, Donna. I don't have any questions, particularly on how it's going to operate. I mean, frankly, I send my kids to that school every day, 3 of them, and if they can go to school every day, I can go to town meeting in an auditorium twice a year. So I think one of the issues that I'll come back to another question, let the other members either ask on town meeting before I hit my other issue with you. Any questions or comments for Ms. Kabibo, moderator? Okay, Donna, one of the issues that I wanted to discuss with you, if you're, you certainly can say I haven't decided yet, but we were having a discussion last week on how specifically Article 9, how do you think Article 9 will be discussed at town meeting?
So we are going to divide the question. I am planning on dividing the question, and we will vote each section separately, and there will not be a final overall vote. If the section passes at that point in time, it's done. So if we start with Article 4, Section 2, we will vote that. And then we will move on to Article 2, Section 8, and we'll move on to Article 3, Section 1, Article 3, Section 3, and then Article 3, Section 4. And I think then there's a subsection at the end. And I may change a little bit about how we're dealing with each of those sections, but there will be at least 4, at least 5, perhaps 6 different votes within this article. And again, I think the way Kate sort of described it is almost like a line item veto. So it allows us to discuss each of them separately, and I think that the reordering of these amendments to put that first one about the town clerk first is important because there will be, if it does not pass, there will be amendments needed to subsequent sections. So that is how I plan on dealing with this article at this point in time.
Okay, could you comment, and again, if it's not your place to comment, then please don't, but could you comment on how the past article or the remaining elements of the article will be transmitted to the state legislature? Will they be separate?
We have a meeting, myself, the assistant town clerk, the AG's office, and our town council are going to discuss the format in which we need to pass this the votes on to the AG and the legislature. So we will make sure that whatever actions we take here are within their guidelines and protocols so that we don't have any issues with passing that information forward once the votes have been taken, especially around the 2/3 concept. With some of this, we want to make sure that we're making sure we adhere to every single one of their guidelines so we don't have any problems. So I can't answer some of that specifically yet because we have not had that meeting yet.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kabibo?
I actually do have one.
Mr.
Oh.
Riley?
Yeah, and Donna, hopefully you already talked to Kate or Jay about this, but I'm confused about when you said that then there won't be an overall vote. Don't we have to vote the complete Article
No,
9?
my understanding from Kate and the way that I've been, the things that I've looked into is once we vote those sections, it's voted. We don't then, because it sort of would go against the whole concept of why we're dividing the question, quite honestly.
So then effectively that just makes each one of those individual items an article in and of itself.
In a way, yes. Yes, that's one way of looking at it.
So there's the legal is saying that you can do it this way, and and when you do it this way, it has the effect of making each one an independent article, so you don't have to vote the overall article.
So we're basically dividing the question. I actually think this will facilitate the discussion, and it will allow people to feel a little bit more comfortable about not looking at this omnibus in front of them all at once. And I have given some more thought to the idea about the handout and talked to people about the technical aspects of other ways of presenting this. And I have come around to deciding that I agree with you that we need to do a handout. And in fact, I'm going to have it printed a little bigger so people can read it easier.
I totally get breaking it up and voting on the pieces individually. I was just concerned. I wanted to be certain, given that this is a major piece of legislation that has to go to the State House, and then we have to it has to go to the ballot box. I just wanted to make sure that we're absolutely crystal clear on the procedures.
And that is why we're meeting with the Attorney General and the Assistant Town Clerk, myself, and the our legal counsel to make sure that all those T's are crossed and I's are dotted, because I don't want this to be a problem either. This is serious. Charter changes are a major deal here, and because we've chosen to do it this way and have to bring it in front of the legislature versus another option that we could have taken to get here, it is very important that we deliver this package to them correctly.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
So, any other questions or concerns? We will be giving you guys all music stands to rest your books on. And we tested them and they will not fall over, because we can't possibly give you desks in the way that we're going to be setting things up.
Are we not on stage with tables as per normal?
Here, we cannot really give you tables up there, so you will each be in an individual chair with a music stand for your book.
Okay.
That is the plan at the moment. As we move forward into this, if this is a major concern, we can see what we can do, but the table issue up on the stage, we have a limited amount of space. We're trying very hard to keep people separated correctly, and within the school's guidelines as well.
Okay, thank you.
So may I, so I was in touch with John Engler, and we will work to make it as comfortable as possible for the committee to be on stage. I personally think that there can be tables as opposed to music stands. I think the music stands will be difficult for the committee to address the voters, but I will keep you guys updated on that.
Okay, so Deirdre, when we talk about the music stands will be in front of the person as they're sitting. We can have a table at the microphone if that will help facilitate the process. We are worried about sight lines as well. But the music stands are simply for, I mean, when you sat in the gym last spring, or was that fall, I can't remember, on the bleachers, you didn't have a table in front of you. You had a table when you came up to the microphone. So we're trying to do something similar, but give you a place to rest your book since you're going to be sitting in a chair on the stage. So I
Donna,
hope that addresses some of that concern.
Donna, how many microphones for the Finance Committee total?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you said.
How many microphones total for the Finance Committee?
We can have we can have 3 if that's what you'd like. There was going to be one main one. Is your concern that everybody will have to stand up to go to the microphone?
I have no concern. Simple question. I just want to make sure
Okay.
there's at least 2.
We can utilize up to 10, I believe, microphones, and we've committed to 8 so far. We can easily add the extra 2 if we need to.
We just need at least 2. That's all we need. Two microphones for
that's
the
fine.
FinCom. 3
That's
would be
good.
great. 2 is the minimum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get to it. So we now need to go back to Article 3, capital items. We did not vote this last week. My intent is that we would vote it. As kind of a lead-in to this discussion, the 532,875 number that's been proposed by the Select Board contains 14 different projects which have been evaluated. It is not all of the projects that were requested from the town departments. Obviously, there's quite a few projects on there, as Mr. Berry described. So his list was provided to us last week. I actually have a question for Ms. Johnston. Ms. Johnston, the 532,875 is what you came up with for what the recommendation was per the items on the article from the Select Board. And then there was a number of free cash left over for Springtown meeting, potentially, set aside, basically, as I understand it. Can you confirm that there is available funds beyond the 532 that potentially could get allocated in this Fall Town meeting, which would obviously reduce the available balance for Springtown meeting?
That's true.
Okay.
All we have set aside this time is the 532, which is in the article.
Understood. And it's the only reason it's set aside is because that's all of the value of the projects that the Select Board has recommended.
That is true.
Okay. So, and I'm not trying to steer us in one way or another. I believe we should use our free cash, our discretionary dollars responsibly. We don't need to spend every dollar. But there are we discussed a number of projects that may be missing and you may think may be omitted from this. So before we vote it, now is the time to look at that list and make sure that we're comfortable voting the 14 projects that the Select Board has put before us. And once you've had an opportunity to look at the list that's on Article 3 versus the Capital Planning Committee list, which is just not necessarily, it's divided into the highest priorities, medium priorities, and lower priorities. If you feel like there's some missing or something that should get funded this town meeting, now is the time to discuss it.
Can I just say something?
Deirdre.
The director of the DPW, just texted me, the excavator will be split 4 ways between water, sewer, stormwater, and general. So the $50,000 and $50,035 would actually be split. So only a fourth of that will be funded by free cash. That was his intent. So I don't know if that changes anything.
So, excuse me, I just want a point of clarification. So the retained earnings for the enterprise funds is their essential free cash. So it's still going to come out of somewhere. So I just want people to be aware of that. So the number in the town meeting would still remain 532,875. It's just that the funding source would change in the article.
Right.
Okay?
Correct, yeah.
with that particular change, not necessarily what I was discussing.
Right.
Yep. Okay, with that said, I'll certainly entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stedman.
I move that the committee recommend approval of Article 3 to see if the town will vote to appropriate and raise by taxation, transfer from available funds, or borrow the sum of $532 to fund the capital items, 14 capital items listed in the table in front of us, recognizing that there will be some funding sources for a portion of number 8 when the article is finally finalized.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Finance Committee vote to approve Article 3, which is the capital item article in the amount of $532,875 without amendment for the 14 projects listed and funding source to be clarified, likely in the motion at town meeting. Discussion. None heard? I'm going to go to a roll call vote. If I can find my sheet.
I actually have a question.
Ms. Garzon.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself fast enough. So are we not going to vote the funding sources at this point? Okay.
I don't believe we need to. I think they can be clarified, and I think the bottom line is the same.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. So we'll go to a vote. Pete B., yay. Jody?
Yay.
Doug?
Yay.
Joyce?
Yay.
Jim?
Yay.
Kathy?
Yay.
Sarah?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
Peter, you?
Yay.
Thank you very much. Okay, pressing on. Let's see if we can.
Mr. Chair,
Miss McGinnis.
I have a question on Article 4. Just let me know when is the appropriate time to discuss it.
Let's do it now.
If I could get clarification whether the select board voted in favor of this, and if so, I've heard money bandied about that the federal or state government is giving to the town in millions, and I haven't heard yet if that money is going toward this or if it's still, for some unforeseen reason, still a discussion before the select board, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we've been told that the town has received $2.4 million, of which I believe $800,000 has already been received and another 1.6 to follow. I do not know the select board's status of their vote on the article, and I will defer to Mr. Jermaine on that to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the select board has agreed that that money will go in its entirety toward the PFAS plant. We've sent letters to our state representatives because there's $5 billion that the federal government has sent to the state, this particular state. And that money can be used for PFAS mitigation. We have confirmed that with Representative Auchincloss. And he has confirmed that that money should be made available to us. We have also been in touch with Representative Dooley, and he's trying to make sure that that money gets transferred to us. Overall, we're working to try to get approximately $20+ million allocated to this town specifically for PFAS mitigation. That will permit us to manage potentially 4 units for PFAS mitigation of our wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And might I add, there's been some discussion among the select board whether this is going to be paid for strictly by the water enterprise, or will it be a full funding by all the town residents?
That is under discussion. We have been leaning, let me put it that way, toward it's something that probably the entire town should pay because it has implications for the entire town. That then, of course, leaves an issue for people who are on private wells and so forth. So that's why there hasn't been a final decision. So there will be discussion in the future on that, but the leaning is in one direction at this point.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Ms. Moriarty?
Thank you. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the town is going to receive 2.4 million from the state. Will the request of 5,600,000 be reduced to 3,200,000 for this article?
We can't reduce it because we don't know how much money we're actually going to receive. We can't be finding ourselves in a deficit.
But didn't you just say that we were...
we haven't received all of the money. So what we're saying is, as we receive money, we need to be funded in full by the town. And as money comes in, it will be appropriated for this specific issue. But we can't afford to find ourselves in a deficit on this.
But, Mr. Jermaine, did you not just say that the town is receiving 2.4 million from the state?
Mr. Chairman?
Until all of that has cleared and we know for certain that that money is available to us, that's why we've gone forward with this. Let me be clear. That doesn't mean we're borrowing day one, $5.6 million. We borrow as we need. All we're looking is for the authority to borrow if necessary. So if we ended up on, let's say, November 7th with a check for $4 million, we would only be using from borrowing 1.6. So all we're getting is an authorization from the town. It doesn't mean we're going to borrow it. It's no different than the school or any other project we've been in.
So then that will become a possibility of our Article 15, where a borrowing amount may come lower and we would be rescinding later on.
Yeah, I'm
That's
sorry,
okay.
it was a little muddy, but I think I understand.
Mr. Jermaine, please let me answer that. Mr. Gazinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly correct, as Chairman Jermaine noted. This is similar to, say, a school project where we have to borrow, we have to get authorization to borrow up to, say, 50 million, even though we expect 20 million in payments from the state, you still have to get the full authorization.
No, I
You just
understand
don't-
that now.
Yeah, so it's similar. And yes, if when it's all said and done, if we only end up borrowing 2 million, then once the project is completed and closed, we'd come back to town meeting and ask for the unneeded borrowing authorizations to be rescinded.
Thank you.
Ms. McGinnis, do you, any more questions on this article, Article 4?
I just look forward to the select board and the Chair Jermaine just voting on the funding source for this.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go to Article 9. We had some extensive discussion, and by my records, so just as a comment, I understand Ms. Kabibo and how she is exercising her discretion to conduct town meeting. My discretion as chair, we're going to continue on doing it the same way that we opted to, which is very similar to hers, but we are going to vote at the end on a single article after we go through the elements. So my hope is that we can do that here right now. My records show that we voted to pass Article 4-2, other elected officials, or Article 4, which is Element 4 of Article 9. elections and other elected offices, which addresses the town clerk. We opted to recommend approval of that. We did the same for Article 2, legislative branch. We did the same for Article 3, executive branch. Article 3-3, powers of appointment. We then got to Section 3-4 of the town administrator, and we passed subsection 1, powers and duties, or we recommend for approval, adoption, that subsection. And then we stopped. We have a couple of items open. One was, hold on one second. So I'm going to go back up. We did vote to pass Section 3-4, Town Administrator and the powers and duties, but we did have a comment, and it looks like it's been addressed. I just wanted to point that out. By deleting Sections 3-4 and 3-5 in their entirety and replaced with the following.
Correct.
So that has been clarified, and I think that's consistent with the discussion we had last week.
Yes.
I'm getting any leftover concerns?
Mr. Chairman, if I may add one point.
You may, Mr. Gazinski.
Also, that's correct what you mentioned. That was following up from the Finance Committee's discussion and questions and some concerns, as well as a concern of the town moderator. I did go back to the town council to review those sections of concern. She did provide me with some recommended language to clarify the first one you just mentioned under Section 3-4. Town Administrator, that number 2, you just read that change section. The other change was there was a concern noted as to perhaps a gap in coverage as far as an interim town administrator.
20 days.
Of more than 20 days. So again, in conversations with town council, the language, I think you received a copy in yellow that highlighted that one particular section. It added the words, the absence of the town administrator in excess of 20 days, so that covered that gap. I have reached out to all 3 members of the select board, and they've indicated they have no objections to those changes. So those are really, for the most part, clarifications and really closing the loop. So those changes have been made to the warrant, and hopefully that addresses the concerns that were posed last Wednesday.
Okay, just to clarify, I don't have the yellow copy, and that's okay, because I'm swamped in paperwork over
Yeah,
here right
none
now.
of us
But I
have
do
it.
want
I
us
printed
to
it out.
explicitly go over that particular section before we vote it. So, the previous paragraph A within element subsection 2, acting town administrator, again, as we read it last week, said temporary absence with the approval of the select board, the town administrator may designate a qualified town administrative officer or employee to exercise the powers and perform the duties of the town administrator during an absence of the town administrator of not more than 20 days.
Correct.
Including Saturdays and holidays. Such delegation shall be made by letter filed with the town clerk, the municipal finance director, and the select board. That has been changed.
So Section C, rather, interim town administrator.
Yep.
There you go.
It says in the event of the absence of the town administrator in excess of 20 days. So those are the words added.
Okay, thank you.
Resignation or
Yeah, I
termination of the
appreciate
town administrator. So basically, it adds that one clause to cover that gap. The question was, what happens if, for whatever reason, the town administrator is unable to perform their duties after 20 days? How is that handled? So this addresses that question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the committee? Okay, I will take a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Riley,
I move that we approve, sorry, I can't find my,
Article 9.
I lost my place. I'm on my laptop, which is why I don't have the camera, and I lost my place.
can,
It's article number 4, section, article 3-4.
Article 3, Okay. I move that we approve Article 3, Section 4 of the warrant under Article 9 in the warrant as written. Section 3-4 is titled Town Administrator.
Before Doug, can I request that you amend your motion, just because previously I was keeping subsection 1 within that same section 3-4. We already voted subsection 1, powers and duties. So I would like for your motion to be for subsection 2, acting town administrator,
Okay.
just for consistency.
Okay, no problem. All right, I move that the committee vote to approve Section 3-4, Town Administrator, subsection 2, under Article 9 of the warrant, as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the committee vote to approve Article 9, Section 3-4, subsection 2, acting town administrator, without amendment. Discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. McGinnis.
I just once again vote my opposition to this, adding this article to a very important document in town, especially when subsection R is, the reason given was because of COVID. I don't believe a charter should be amended strictly for purposes like that. And I believe less is best when it comes to a charter. This information is available as it's the exact description when the select board hired Mr. Guzinski. I've failed to see how this is important enough to warrant changes that have been made up until a day ago to the actual product here, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll go to a vote. So we're going to vote to recommend approval of Article 9, Section 3-4, subsection 2. Pete B, yes. Jody?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Kathy?
No.
Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mr. Underhill?
Yes.
The motion passes. So at this point, we have voted to approve all sub-elements, or I've called them elements along the way, of Article 9. So I would like to take one more motion that...
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Kabibo.
I thought that you had not actually voted the town administrator piece of it, the top part of section 3-4, the wording around that. Maybe I missed it in my notes, and if I do, I apologize, but I didn't see that you actually voted that section.
Well, for clarity, we will. So I will take a motion to vote on there are 3 lines there, section 3-4, town administrator, by amending heading to town administrator, chief administrative officer, and number 2, by deleting sections 3-4 and 3-5 in their entirety and replace with the following. So can I get a motion on that?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Riley?
I move that we approve Section 3-4, Town Administrator, under Article 9 of the warrant, both subsections 1, which reads by amending heading to Town Administrator, Chief Administrative Officer, and 2, by deleting sections 3-4 and 3-5 in their entirety and replace with the following, which we just voted in favor of.
Second.
As written.
It's been moved and seconded that the committee approve section 3-4, town administrator, elements 1 and 2. Discussion. None heard. All those in favor when called, please respond, yea or nay. Pete B, yay. Jody,
Yay.
Doug,
Yay.
Joyce,
Yay.
Jim,
Yay.
Kathy,
No,
Sarah,
Yay.
John,
Yay.
Mr. Underhill.
Yay.
I'm having trouble with my own name. Sorry, Peter. Okay.
Nope, that's fine.
Okay. Now I'd like to have a motion on the entire Article 9, which is, just to recap, we've voted to approve every element of it, and this should be a formality. But we're going to do it nonetheless. So can I get a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Riley?
I vote that the committee approve Article 9 in its entirety as written.
Can you move, or do you want to vote? You said you move, but you want, excuse
No,
me.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes, I recommend that we approve Article 9.
You move that we approve, okay?
I move that we approve
Second.
Article 9
It's
as
been
written.
moved and seconded that the committee vote to approve Article 9 as previously discussed and elements voted. Discussion. We'll go to a vote. Please respond when called. Pete B, yay. Jody,
Yay.
Doug,
Yay.
Joyce,
Yay.
Jim,
Yay.
Kathy,
nay,
Sarah,
Yay.
John,
Yay.
Peter.
Yay.
The article passes. Okay. Let's see, agenda. Just give me 1 minute.
We actually have to still vote, Article number 2.
That was going to be my question.
Thank you. Okay, so I show that we voted Article 2 last week, and perhaps I think
Well,
we
maybe
discussion, and I moved to table it. So
Right.
thank you very much. We tabled it. And the reason for that, sorry, thank you. The reason for that is because the discussion we just had to start the meeting. So as talking point, or to at least get us started on the discussion, I think we've heard that there's obviously a variety of opinions and discussion on whether it's properly placed, whether the resources are needed. And for one, I'm in favor for it because I do think that there's a compelling need, and I do think there's a little bit of misunderstanding about what the skills and resources that a social worker brings to the town. I've talked to a few of the, not everybody, but I've talked to a few of the town department heads. Frankly, I've solicited their support, and I wasn't given arguments contrary because I want to make sure I understand what this is for and how it would be used. And that's where I'm going to stick with my advocacy for it, and that there's a resource that would help mitigate the risk of marijuana retail sales. Frankly, not everybody that smokes marijuana or ingests or takes marijuana is in need of help, and that's not how that's not how my comments or my sentiments are intended to come across. But there are those that do, and I think that's you can't make an argument that nobody is at risk by having retail sales of marijuana in a community. And I think that the town, when it voted this, there were many for and many passionately against and many passionately for it. And I think that that's why there is such a thing as a host community agreement with impact funds to mitigate those risks. And I think this is a wise use of those funds. So I'm an advocate for it. I don't mean to have discussion before discussion, but the floor is open for those that want to make a point, and then we'll take a motion on it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Borgman?
in my opinion, clearly the position is not really fully ironed out yet. It, you know, as Mr. Mulaney said, it could provide many different services. And I'm sure Millis could probably benefit greatly by, you know, a lot of those things that were presented tonight. But the thing that is missing is really a defined role or a job description, and how this person is going to be utilized throughout the town, who they report to, exactly how their time's split, and really, quite frankly, how it relates back to the marijuana side specifically. So, in my opinion, I'm not voting for it because I don't believe it's really ready, and I would hope that it would get deferred until such time that that information could be concisely presented and stated so that the town can vote appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stedman?
I agree with what Mr. Borgman said, but I do have real reservations housing this with the school board and the schools. It just seems to me that it should be under the, have more visibility if it were under the select board and within the town management. And it hasn't been flushed out, so I think it's premature to recommend approval of the warrant including that.
Okay.
I too agree with that, with both Mr. Borgman and Mr. Stedman. I don't think enough homework has been done. I don't think it's a bad request. I just feel that there's got to be more information and who's going to be the boss and where this person's going to house and what their job duties will be. And just on a side note, the fact that we have the retail marijuana, that was something that we had to have because of ComCon getting into putting their application in a time when it was she was allowed not only to have the medicinal, but was also allowed to have the recreational. And that's why when we had the committee discussing it, we limited how many retail establishments could be in this town. Just to clear it, it wasn't that, it was, we had no other choice but to approve a retail.
Mr. Chair, Kathy McGinnis.
Go ahead,
if I
Kathy.
might.
Yes, please.
I asked town council a few weeks ago, and he said, if we don't spend the money, we don't lose it. So perhaps something like this, it was on the Springtown meeting discussion. It's unfortunate that this wasn't vetted properly during the summer with more analysis. And all of a sudden, again, at the last minute, we have the money, let's throw it in. I'd rather see it better vetted, as my colleagues here have said. And perhaps there may be something that a full-time school and even a part-time for the town, when the money is just rolling in from these impact funds. And, I'm not in favor of voting for something and then figuring out how the duties are going to be sorted out. I'd like to see it written in paper. I think all of us are for helping the people, like the kids out, but, you're getting into the part of, are kids just allowed to talk like that, or the parents have given permission. I just don't know enough to do this, and I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so, and I'm not cutting off discussion, and frankly, we haven't even started discussion officially, but given that it looks like the committee is not going to vote to approve this, I just want you all to look at Article 2 as it's currently written, and I certainly will take a motion, or we can continue to have dialogue, but the motion needs to be a couple things, needs to consider a couple things. we can either vote to disapprove the entire article, or we can amend it as written, or we can pass it as written. So please take a moment and come up with your suggested motion, because we need to move on this one way or another. And likely what would happen is that the school townwide social worker in the amount of $60,000 would have to be removed. The motion needs to include that, that funding. And then I just want to ask Ms. Johnston if that will cause us to go back and make any adjustments to any of the other articles. I don't think, actually, I don't think it does. So I will take a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Boyardi.
Sorry. I move that Article 2 be accepted except for the townwide social worker request.
I need a little bit more specificity since we're going to be,
Okay. I move that Article 2, to see if the town will vote to transfer from marijuana impact fees the amount of $184,478. This would, in turn, this would be transferred from free cash, and the transfer from free cash, the sum of $65,000, and transfer from water enterprise receipts, the sum of $214,000, for a total sum of let me do the math. $184,478. This would exclude the townwide social worker of $60,000.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded that the committee vote to amend Article 2 and recommend approval of the amendment for transfer of marijuana impact funds, free cash, the sum of $184,478, the transfer from free cash, the sum of $65,000, and transfer from water enterprise receipts, the sum of $214,000, for a total sum of, there is an adjustment to the 523,478, correct, Carol?
Right.
Right, that would get reduced by 60, which is now 463,478. Can I get a, yep, I did that public math right, thank you. For additional wages and expenses not sufficiently funded on Article 3 and Article 6. Our motion, the motion also includes elimination of the townwide social worker proposed by the school in the amount of $60,000, with a bottom line of $184,478 of marijuana impact funds from free cash. Discussion. None heard. We'll take it to a vote. Pete Berube, yay. And we're voting yay, adopts the amendment. Okay. Jody.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I
So
couldn't understand what you said.
a yay vote adopts the motion and the amended language, which removes
Okay.
the $60,000 for the social worker.
Nay.
Doug.
Yay.
Joyce.
Yay.
Jim.
Yay.
Kathy.
Yay?
Sarah.
Yay.
Was that a yay, Sarah?
Yeah, no.
No. John.
Yay.
Mr. Underhill.
No.
And so the amendment passes, a vote of 6-3. Okay, now I believe we have voted all of the articles. Thank you very much for bearing with me. So a couple of items on what we're going to do next as a committee, or what we need to do specifically to bring us home to fall town meeting. So each of the committee members, based on the assignments that we took last week, first off, I'm just going to make sure we don't have any changes to those. Does anybody have any concerns with the article that they've been assigned? And then just to double check that, I want to make sure that the articles that people have been assigned, that they voted in the majority. If anybody, based on the votes tonight, ended up on the minority, then we will discuss whether or not they will present the article at town meeting. And I don't think that that's the case, so if that comes up. So please take a look at that, and if you have any concerns, please let me know this week. Additionally, if there's interest in doing a minority report, please, if you were in the minority, and I'll check our rules, I'll send an email out tomorrow, but if you're in the minority and if the rules, if the vote came out within the threshold for a minority report, I'll ask for volunteers to do it. It doesn't mean that we have to do one. It's really up per the rules. We have the option of doing one, okay? So the first thing that has to be done by the committee members is to write the synopsis, the article synopsis. And I would ask that you look, it's really just 2 sentences, 2 to 3 sentences max. What is the article about? It's not a discussion of pros and cons of the article. It just says, this article is to see if the town will allocate money for blah, blah, blah. And then maybe one other item of context. My recommendation is that you pull up last year or last town meeting's town meeting report, and you'll see those items up front. You'll see it'll go out in the mailing, and it really is just a quick synopsis of what the article is. It's not difficult, so please don't overthink it. My first couple of years here, town meetings, I put way too much in it. Deirdre had to call me and say, hey, you missed the mark, and caused her a lot of work. And I see Mr. Jermaine chuckling. Deirdre, am I on track with that? Anything else that you want to convey to us as we give you this information?
No, not at all. The sooner I get it, I would like to know whether or not we should put the PFAS handout or PFAS portion that Kleinfelder provided in the Finance Committee's report to the residents.
Okay, we'll discuss that separately. So in terms of the homework that everybody has, I want you to provide that information directly to Deirdre. Please courtesy copy me on it, and also please courtesy copy Ms. Garzon on it as our vice chairperson. And the reason for that is we're just going to make sure that we're helping Deirdre. If there's somebody that's going to kind of track you down and say, hey, we're waiting for your homework, it's going to be either myself or Ms. Garzon. So again, if you have any questions on what you should do, please look in the previous town meeting report. It's up front. It's not that difficult. And then after that, between now and our next meeting, which we'll let you know if there's going to be a meeting next week. We will have pre-town meeting, right, Deirdre? And that's currently scheduled for, what's that?
Yes, that's on November 3rd, I believe.
Yep, Yes, it is.
So it's entirely up to the committee whether they want to meet next week.
So I'm currently leaning towards no. If there are any inputs, yay or nay for that, I'll entertain them now, but currently I don't plan to meet next week. But everybody needs to have, they're just working on their discussion. If they have questions about the article, again, the discussion elements, the motions, don't worry about the motions. Those are going to be given to us. We're going to read them verbatim. However, the discussion, the members will lead the discussion. You'll be the first person that Ms. Kabibo, town moderator, goes to when it's after there's a motion and a second. She will come right back to you because you will be the one making the motion, Mr. Stedman, and then you'll start the discussion. And the discussion really should be a complete synopsis of the article and the salient points that caused the committee to vote the way we did. You do not have to necessarily give the full vote tally or all of the opinions on it. You're trying to advocate for how we voted. You're trying to convey a clear recommendation as to why we voted the way that we did. And that's why I started off by saying, if you're in the minority, let me know, and I'll check the tally, and Deirdre can help me with that. So you don't necessarily have to have those done prior to pre-town meeting. I would highly, highly suggest that you do, because if you get you can avoid a lot of questions in pre-town meeting. If you get a lot of questions in pre-town meeting, that just illustrates that when there's twice or 10 times the attendance at town meeting, you missed something. So it's a good opportunity to make sure that you've completely covered the article and you helped the discussion along. Any comments or questions on that?
I actually have I had sent out an email after discussing with Chuck from the Millis Medway Town Paper. Would you like the book to be put on their website or Facebook page? They did offer to do that.
I personally don't know why we wouldn't. It's a public document, and it's so I would be in favor of it, and I would take others' inputs on that before we decide.
I think it's a great idea.
So
Okay.
I would say the more channels, the better.
right.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up, so thank you. So we will do that, Deirdre. In terms of including the PFAS sheet, I'm in favor of that as well. I haven't reviewed it. It just needs to be concise. It needs to be free of jargon and easily readable and digestible, and can't leave any open-ended, I suppose it should answer questions. It should answer more questions than it stimulates. So, and I suspect, based on what Mr. McKay has said about the consultant, and I forget her name, but that she's brilliant. I'm sure it'll be good. I'll review that, and I'm in favor of including that as well. More information, the better.
I just think that the more residents know about it prior to town meeting is a better way to go.
Yeah, one of the questions, Kathy, I think you're doing the article on PFAS on the plants. One of the questions that I would think we would anticipate is that what is my, how much is my water rate going up? And I don't know that you can answer that definitively, but there should be a range. Joyce was asking, well, why, if we're getting $3.2 million or $2.4 million, I think it's 2.4. If we're getting 2.4, that means we're only borrowing so much, but if we don't get it, then it's still 5.6. So there's your range of what the water rate could come up. And it may be maybe it won't be the water rate, as Mr. Germain had alluded to. It may be a full town expenditure and not necessarily coming out of the enterprise. So I think you understand that best as our rep on the enterprise fund committee, advisory committee. So no better person to help explain that. So,
Nicely said.
Any old business, new business? Any questions on anything that we've got to cover? I will take a minute to go over minutes, please.
Already did.
I will take a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boyardi.
I move that we approve the minutes of October 6th and October 13th.
I'm going to do one at a time.
All right.
That's all right.
I move that we approve the minutes of October 6th.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the committee vote to approve the minutes from our meeting on October 6th as written. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, Kathy McGinnis.
Ms. McGinnis.
I'd like to put in the minutes where Chief Barrett outlined his items that I raised the matter that when the ambulance revolving fund was approved, those funds at town meeting were stated to be used for future purchases of ambulances. And now all of a sudden those funds are using to fund the firemen. And I just would hope that the select board in their wisdom would go back to using those funds for what they were originally, unfortunately, there's not a lot of history on boards and towns. So, but Chief Barrett mentioned that fact also. So I'd like that put in the minutes, Mr. Chair, if I may.
I'm not sure how typically amendments to meetings occur. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Deirdre to go back to that particular discussion and just review it, Deirdre, and then we'll come back to the October 6th minutes once you've had a chance to do that and make the amendment. And you're free to, come to me and let me know if you would, just send me a draft and we'll just vote at our next meeting. Okay? Any objections?
Sounds good.
Go ahead, Deirdre.
Yes,
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. All right, the 13th. And Kathy, is that okay?
Fine.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Miss Boyardi.
I move that we approve the minutes of October 13th, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we vote to approve the minutes from our October 13th meeting without exception.
Mr. Chair?
Discussion.
Yes. Under the sidewalk improvements, in the second paragraph, it's Mr. Mc, no, it's the third paragraph, I'm sorry, where Mr. McKay is talking about the sidewalk plan and how it's progressed. I believe that he stated that it's Pleasant Street from Village Street to Main Street, rather than, as written here, Pleasant Street to Village Street. It's Pleasant Street from Village to Main, I believe.
Where is that, John? Sorry.
That is under
It's on
the
the second
sidewalk improvement
page.
discussion, the
Page.
third paragraph.
Page.
There's, pages are not numbered.
Yep, I got it, okay.
Yep, second page.
That third paragraph, DPW sidewalk plan was progressed over the years, specifically with improvements to the intersection of Plain Street and Village Street.
Right, and then the next sentence,
Pleasant Street to Village Street.
yep.
In order to,
I believe it's Pleasant Street from Village to Main. That's where he's saying they have the right-of-way, that'd be the easiest one to do, and yada, yada. I believe that's what he said, doing that whole stretch.
Okay, so my discussion point is that we strike that paragraph altogether. We don't need to get into that much detail. We strike the paragraph and we vote to approve the minutes without the paragraph. And if anybody wants to
That's fine with me.
be that specific, then they can go back to the video and catch it there. So if you want to, did we get a second? We're in discussion, so we'll vote. I think we have to vote to not approve, and then we have to vote per my suggested amendment. So if we'll do
Whatever
that,
you say, Mr.
all
Chair.
those in favor of voting to approve the minutes as written, please say yay. I'm hoping for a no vote here. That's my discussion point, so that we can get right back on it. All those in favor, say yay. None heard. All those against approval as written, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. So I'd like to take a motion or an amendment of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I
Mr. Stebbins.
move that we strike paragraph 3 in the sidewalk improvement section of the minutes from our meeting of October 13th.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we vote to approve the minutes with the exception to sidewalk improvements, paragraph 3, stricken from the draft. Discussion. All those in favor say yay.
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 Thank you very much for that. And
Opposed?
any nays? Anybody opposed? None heard. Thank you. Okay. And Deirdre, the minutes are excellent. So I'd rather have more detail than not enough. So thank you very much. Last calls before we take a motion to adjourn. Okay, I'll take a motion.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, say yay.
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 Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.